We're here with the three Republican candidates in the 9th Congressional District. Thank you all for coming today.
Thank you for inviting us today.
We start each of these interviews out with a couple of questions that we ask all the candidates in all the races, just to get them out of the way. And the first question is, have you been arrested before? We'll start with Ms. Platt and move this way.
No, sir.
Okay. Mr. Bonilla?
No.
Mr. Vivaldi?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Could you tell us the circumstances?
Sure. 25 years ago, I was pulled over, a normal stop by a police officer.
Mm.
And during that time, there was a issue with a check that I had written.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, it was one check that I had written that had come back. So I went to court, and no adjudication was withheld,
Mm-hmm.
and paid the fine.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the end of the story.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Next question is, and we'll start again with you, Ms. Platt. Have you ever declared bankruptcy?
No.
Okay. Mr. Bonilla?
No.
Okay. Mr. Vivaldi?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Any circumstances?
Circumstances through a divorce and loss of employment about 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
In that time frame.
Okay. All right. Thank you. This time I'll start with you, Mr. Vivaldi. Why are you running for this office?
Absolutely. I believe strictly District 9 has been very underrepresented. I feel that our present congressman is not doing what is necessary to reach out, not just to the constituents, but even to local officials, be it city commissioners, county commissioners, and understanding the needs of our community. And for me, I've been a servant for the last 35 years. I've lived 3 decades here in the district, have worked on the Orange County Charter Commission, work on several boards, and work very hard for the community. So I believe that there's a straight disconnect as to really the needs of the community. And I believe that the present congressman is really focused on his personal agenda. I think that there's a chance for us to really make a difference for the community and be a voice for those who are not being heard in not just here locally, but also in DC. So for me, it's very, very important that the folks in this community understand that I will work very hard. I'm not afraid to roll up my sleeves to make it happen. So for us, I think the change is necessary, and it's a change for the betterment.
Okay.
Paul, if I may interject and follow up with
Sure.
Mr. Vivaldi, you kept on referring to the needs of the community. What do you see as the needs of the community?
Sure. I believe a lot of the needs in the community, specifically when we're not just talking about Orange County, but we're talking about Osceola County, because we have 3 counties we cover, including into Polk. We have an economic discrepancy. When we look at this district, we're not just talking about Avalon Park and Lake Nona. We're also talking about Azalea Park. We're talking about Buenaventura Lakes. We're talking about a huge contingency, and even though a lot of folks don't like to talk about it, but this is truly a majority district. And that being, majority being about 42.6% Hispanic, 10% African American. These are districts that really, really need the employment, the economic development. We're doing a great job, I believe, in Lake Nona with Medical City. And everything that's happening there. But I think we need to also be expanding that out into the Osceola County area, into the Polk County area, so that we can create these jobs and the momentum that we need to make sure that these folks are able to supply for their family. I think we all want a better quality of life. And by creating an economic boom in these areas, we can help create those jobs and help these families that so need it.
Is that the responsibility of the federal government?
Oh, it's a responsibility of everyone. I believe everyone needs to be a part of this. I don't think it's just the federal government or just local government. I believe that all of us need to be involved as far as how do we grow our business, what businesses do we attract into our communities, and I believe that we can use our sway, our persuasion to bring companies into the Central Florida area that will bring those higher paying jobs into the area.
Okay, I'm going to go next to Ms. Platt. Why you're running for this office?
I care deeply about this district and about its past and about its future and about every single person in it. I have a long history in the district, both in entrepreneurial business, and in agriculture and in K through 20 education. My personal history gives me a great deal of empathy and understanding for people in the district from all income levels. And my experience gives me the ability to make decisions that are going to find critical solutions, things that work back home. I believe that the people in this district need a voice. They need someone that's going to listen and hear them, and to represent them in dignity and in honor. And that's what I hope to bring to the district.
You mentioned your empathy. Could you elaborate on that a little bit? Where does your empathy come from?
I grew up in a little town in North Carolina, and my mom and dad had a 4th grade education. They worked in the textile mills. So I know what it's like to have parents who are laid off from work. I know what it's like to not be able to go to college without a Pell Grant. And I know what it's like to look for opportunities and a hand up in order to access this wonderful promise of America. And we have people in our district that need that hand up. We also have people who offer incredible promise for the future of this district in a diversified industry and in a transition from one industry to another.
Mr. Bonilla.
I run out of response to a renewed call of duty. As the only veteran in this field, I took an oath 25 years ago to serve this country, to protect and defend our Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And you know, there's great concern over the course of this country. There's great concern over whether America is going to be able to honor her covenants to her citizens, whether America is going to be able to maintain that trajectory of exceptionalism. And so I answered the call of duty, and I put my name out there. I put myself out there as a candidate for Congress based on that. I couldn't look my boys in the eye, 2 years old and 11 months old respectively. I couldn't look them in the eye and say that I hadn't done everything I could to serve, to step into the breach, and to find some way to bring us all together and find solutions to some of the problems that we face today. Now, Central Florida is a wonderful place, and it really is a microcosm of America. It attracts people from all over the state, from all over the country, from all over the world, who come here in search of a better life, of a better opportunity for their families. I'm confident that I am the candidate in this field that can effectively build bridges to everybody within the constituencies of our district, whether it be our rancher community in St. Cloud, whether it be our Hispanic community throughout the district, or our African American community, or everybody else within the district. It's important to build bridges. It's important to bring people together and find areas of opportunity where we can work together, where we can engage. Alan Grayson has not done that. Alan Grayson name calls his opposition. Alan Grayson berates. Alan Grayson hasn't brought authentic representation to this district, and that's what I hope to accomplish.
Has he called any names, anyone in the district, or just on the outside?
I'm sorry, has he called anyone within the district?
Yes.
Well, he's called me, and I've been called a loudmouth and a jerk by Alan Grayson, for example, and there are many others that can probably step forth at prior town halls and events and respond to that question. So yes, he has. And of course, there are prior instances of what Alan Grayson has done when he's referred to his opponents as knuckle-dragging Neanderthals, where he spoke very pejoratively to a woman who was testifying before Congress.
Well, that's different. I'm just talking
Yeah.
about in the district.
Yes.
You know, the thing that strikes me, it's almost as if you're running for local office here, and you're running as Republicans who would join, presumably, a majority of Republicans in the House of Representatives.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about empathy and things like that, they're not generally the talking points of Republican candidates for the House. And is that because Osceola, your district, is unique, or what compels each of you to answer as you
respond
did?
to that?
Yeah.
Simply, this is about the people. I mean, we've been so focused on Washington, and I think that most of the voters are tired of the name calling from both sides. I'm not going to go out there and throw Alan Grayson under the bus. There are many things that are being called right now. If you're a Tea Party or a Tea Bagger, if you're a Rhino, there are so many, people are tired. And so when we go through the district, you're knocking door to door, you're talking to folks, they're telling you they're tired of politics as it is. They want someone who's going to go up there and represent their view, what they believe, not what Washington thinks they should believe or what one congressman thinks they should believe by forcing their will. I think that we need to come to the table, be able to talk to one another in such a way that we could resolve issues. And right now, Congress's approval rating and what's happening now, nothing is being resolved. Everything is being kick the can down the road. Let's wait till after the November election. Let's wait until when we really need leaders to stand up and say, when is this going to stop? And that's what we're hearing in the district. So to me, when you ask, it sounds like you're running for local. We are running because they're the voters. The folks in Washington and Texas and California aren't going to vote for us. It's the folks in this specific district that are going to make a decision. Can this candidate represent me well, not just here locally, but even in Washington? So for us, we're listening to the constituents. And I think that's the big difference, is actually being able to talk, listen to constituents, and take their concerns back to Washington and vote according to what they want us to vote.
Okay, Mr. Bonilla?
Well, Tip O'Neill said it best when he said that all politics are local, ultimately. And the people of our district expect us to go up to Washington, D.C. and advocate for them and represent them effectively and listen to their voices. And if you look at Congress's approval rating, that's indicative of some of the national agendas that both parties really are focused on. And you see a lot of this red team, blue team gamesmanship going on, and people are sick of that. Congressional approval ratings reflect that. And when members of Congress get caught up in the national game and don't focus on the needs of their district, you see turnaround and you see change. And that's why recently the Republican conference held a majority leader election, quite frankly, because the people ultimately do weigh in, and that's who we're accountable to.
Ms. Platt?
Well, to me, the reason I say empathy and understanding is that this is an incredibly diverse district, both in industry and age and communities, and it has an incredible amount of potential. It is also the hole in the center of Central Florida, and it needs someone there that's going to partner with the rest of Central Florida in order to bring those types of lifestyle benefits to our region. Now, this does encompass Northeast Polk and all of Osceola County and the southern portion of Orange County. And the potential there is huge. I've often said that I'm in a unique position because I have a strong background of working with diverse groups of people, strong-willed people, to bring them together to accomplish complex goals. And I like to do it within budget.
Thank you.
And I have the freedom to listen to the people in this district. And there's a difference between listening and hearing. And I can vote their voice in office because I do not need to live a lifestyle of special benefits. And I don't have to vote according to the polling wins nationally. I need to listen to what the people in this district needs, what the industry needs, and what type of community we want to have together. And that means each and every one of us.
Quick follow-up to that. Can you give us an example where you've worked with a diverse group of people to accomplish something?
Well, probably the most recent, there's numerous examples over the years. Been very fortunate to be involved in so many things. But probably the most recent would be the Osceola County Association of Realtors. Mm-hmm. We have now approximately 2,000 members. When I came there in 2010, we were not doing well financially. There had been 4 people in my position in 4 years. And there was a lot of disconnect between leadership and the members, and leadership in each other. We have a 15-member board of directors, They change, presidents change every year. And all of us, having been a realtor for over 30 years and had my own brokerage, all of us are extremely type A, strong-willed personalities. And coming together, 5 years later, we are solidly in the black. We've doubled our assets. We've achieved 4 Best Practices Awards from NAR, received over $25,000 in NAR grants that we've never received before, and we have accomplished every single goal on our strategic plan. Now, that doesn't happen alone. I may have been a catalyst in that process, and which my board and past presidents are quick to point out, but that didn't happen by yourself. That happens with everyone on board. And the first thing that has to happen, that's a bipartisan board, by the way. And what has to happen is each person needs to learn to value each other and listen to one another and stay focused on the goal. Stay focused on the what, not the who.
Mr. Vivaldi, what would be your top priority if you were elected to this office?
Top priority, of course, we still are growing our economic issues, and I think that the economic issue is probably right now the biggest deal that we have to deal with in the district. Just seeing that it's slow growth, it's growth, but it's slow growth. Helping speed up the growth is very important. And part of our plan and part of our platform, when we're talking about that, is education. Right now, our children are $1 trillion in debt. When we're talking about college students, I have a few at home that I can talk honestly about, and know that there's a lot of parents out there that are struggling with this because they're living at home. They have debt. That how are we going to get them out of debt? How are we going to help these children? So making sure that there's job availability for them, and I think it's very, very key. And when I talk about education, I think we focus so much on college education. I have no problem with getting our kids to college, but a lot of our children are not college bound and they're not focused on college. We need to make sure that if there's any way of expanding trade schools, making sure that they've got some sort of trade. I was talking, in fact, to some realtors the other day who were telling me how difficult it is to get an electrician because there's just not enough. There's not enough AC technicians that can help them. These are jobs that are not minimum wage jobs. These are jobs that pay really well. And my goal would be to see, especially in this district, because we have a majority of these Hispanic students who are failing. They're not even finishing high school, and we have to figure out a way to keep them focused on their future, and their future depends on their education. So for me, the economic development is still key throughout that whole district. But combining that with the education component, I think is really key to see the growth in that district.
Do you have any specific plans for putting this into effect?
Well, obviously, I worked with local county commissioners here in town because I've been engaged in local politics for quite a while, serving on the Charter Commission here several times. In fact, under a Democrat, Linda Stewart, and I'm a Republican. But she understood that we had the right mindset in what we were trying to do and accomplish for the students. And so for me, it's working together with, I think everything when we're talking about education, also we should stay local. Everything should stay here within the state. I don't think the federal government should be involved in such issues, and I'm sure you may ask about it in Common Core and different things like that. We need to make sure that we leave that balance back here, that we allow for our school systems, for each county to decide what's best for them, even the state for that matter. But we really need to bring things back locally. And I think that allowing our teachers to teach, allowing for these kind of programs to develop is going to be a key component for the future of this district. That's just my opinion, and I think it's very important that we focus on those things.
Mr. Bonilla, I'll restate the question. What would be your top priority if you were elected to this office?
The restoration of opportunity for all Americans. The sum of my time in Washington, D.C. would be spent finding ways to deal with our structural unemployment problem, to deal with the uncertainty of our job creators, whether uncertainty with the tax code or with regulation, and find ways to bring everybody together so that we can get our economic engine going again. That, I believe, is going to be critical in determining where America goes as a nation going forward. Then once we have addressed those components, then perhaps as more people are working and our tax rolls increase, then we can begin to address our debt and address our deficits and address perhaps how we allocate our monies, how we spend our money, and find ways going forward to address not just the $17 trillion that we've accrued over the past years, but also the structural debts on the back end, our obligations, our unpaid obligations to our seniors and to those who are sick among us. How do we honor our commitments or find the best way to honor our commitments while getting rid of some of that debt? These are the things that concern me. I'm concerned with a complex and over-complex tax code that's over 73,000 pages that creates a ton of compliance and sucks a lot of power out of our economy. I'm concerned over the uncertainty that brings to our job creators. I'm concerned over the money that's parked overseas that could well come here and build our economy and help create jobs and bring in tax revenues that would allow us to finance infrastructure spending and that sort of thing. These are the things that concern me.
Well, that's a very ambitious general landscape there. Do you have some specific ideas for conquering some of these giant issues?
Absolutely. Well, the first thing we have to look at is the tax code. Now, with regard to whether it's a fair tax or a flat tax, I'm not wedded to any specific proposal, but I do know that 73,000 pages of tax code isn't going to work. Ultimately, I'll look at scoring on both of those plans and decide which is the best course of action to go. But that's probably the first critical step that we have to engage.
Ms. Platt, same question. Your specific, the first thing you'd want to accomplish if you were elected to office?
I have three main priorities. One is to reform the tax code. The other is to look at prioritize spending so that we can reach national goals and work toward a balanced budget. And the third is really to protect our constitutional rights. If there were three main systemic changes that I could make in DC immediately, one would be to propose legislation that would prevent our elected officials from exempting themselves from laws that they impose on the rest of us, to prevent bureaucracies from legislating through regulation, and I think that you would also need to look at eliminating the President of the United States' ability to issue executive fiat in a way that it usurps the power of the American people to have a voice through their Congress that they've elected. I don't believe that everyone in DC is all bad, of either party. I don't think they have the answers in DC, and that's why I'd like to bring some of that home and ask the constituents here, how is this going to affect you today in your life, in your pocketbook? But I know there has to be systemic change. This didn't happen overnight.
I want to drill down a bit, and I'm sure my colleagues want to take a bite off of some of what you said too. You were talking about prioritizing spending in the budget. Do you have a rank order of which you would make cuts on?
At the current time, you really need to look at what is the chief responsibility of the federal government, and that oath of office that everyone swears, and that even our immigrants swear when they become American citizens. That oath of office means that we need to protect the citizens of the United States. So in that, if that's not prioritized spending, what is? And the next step in prioritized spending is to look at each avenue of spending, not as pork barrel allocations or anything like that, but to say, what does the federal government do? What can the federal government do that no one else can? And what can they do more efficiently with funding that's allocated locally?
What about laws that are on the books that mandate spending? Would you repeal those laws? I mean, how far would you go? I mean, people have paid into Social Security ever since 1935, for Medicare since 1965. What would you do?
Exactly. You can't make those kinds of changes in people's lives after they have spent their life planning, but you're going to have to look at innovation for the future.
But most of the budget, the majority that would be out of control, are on uncontrollables, the thing that you just said you can't touch because it would mess with people's lives. So what would you?
I think we're going to have to look at a long-term plan. It can't be a tomorrow fix, because they've been on the books for some time. People are counting on the ability to access Medicare. They have to have that ability. They're counting on the ability to have access to Social Security that they have paid into, even though it was never meant to be a national pension plan. It was meant to alleviate poverty. But you've got to have a plan for the future. These college kids, they know we've sold them down the river. We're leaving them in generational debt, and they know that it's not going to be there for them. So we've got to do a little bit of long-range strategic planning, and it's going to have to be a stepped basis.
But just one more question to drill down on this. There have been any number of commissions through the years, including Simpson Bowles. I mean, very practical, shared responsibility. So, I mean, where do you go from that? I mean, there have been plenty of plans.
There's going to have to be people that are willing to step up and place a vote for the future.
Do you think?
And not the next political election.
Do you think that if you were to join the Republican majority in the House, that they would go along with that? Or would you be the odd congressperson out?
I'm not sure what the Republican majority is going to look like. I think we're going to have to see what this nation does and how the people speak, because I believe that the American people will speak. And we'll see that in the vote. And then we play the hand we're dealt. But we've got to have some courage.
There are so many issues out there and we've got limited time, so I'm going to do something that I've done with other candidates, and that's a kind of a lightning round of questions, and I'm just interested in yes or no answers, and I'm going to start with a different person with every question, just to be fair. The first question, Mr. Vivaldi, is should Congress increase the federal minimum wage?
No.
Mr. Bonilla?
No.
Ms. Platt?
No.
Okay. I'm sure you all are familiar with Grover Norquist's Americans for Tax Reform pledge against tax increases. Mr. Bonilla, if you're elected, will you sign the pledge?
I already did.
Okay, Ms. Platt?
I've signed it as well.
Okay, Mr. Vivaldi?
Signed it as well.
Okay. Ms. Platt, should Congress pass any legislation that includes a path to citizenship for illegal immigrants?
As complex as issue as immigration is, isn't a yes or no answer.
Okay, we'll move on then, Mr. Bonilla.
No.
Okay, Mr. Vivaldi.
The question again, please?
Should Congress pass legislation that includes a path to citizenship for illegal immigrants?
Yes.
Okay. If you are elected, would you vote to impeach the president, Mr. Vivaldi?
No.
Okay, Mr. Bonilla.
I'll look at the circumstances at that point, but based on what we have in front of us right now, the answer is no.
Okay, Ms. Platt.
I think the first constitutional right that we have in this nation is to be innocent until proven guilty. Now, if there's ever been a case for a grand jury hearing, it's now. And I would want to hear the facts before I made any decision like that. And I don't think we have all of them.
Mr. Bonilla, do you support building the Keystone XL pipeline?
Yes.
Ms. Platt?
Yes.
Mr. Vivaldi?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Ms. Platt, would you support legislation that expanded criminal background checks for gun purchasers beyond the licensed dealers to which it applies now?
I think that we have ample background checks on those
Okay,
now.
so that's now. Mr. Vivaldi?
No.
Okay. Mr. Bonilla?
No.
Okay. All right. We can go on to more questions that require more than yes or no. Thank you all for participating in that.
All right. Well, I guess I'll start with Mr. Bonilla on this question. Should Congress increase or cut defense spending or leave it alone?
Congress should look for opportunities to eliminate wasteful spending and abusive spending wherever possible, and that includes obviously defense spending. Now, when you look at defense spending, you want to look at what's outdated, what doesn't work anymore, and start from there. But at this stage in our country's history, I don't think anything is sacred.
Ms. Platt?
I think our first obligation is to tell those people who put their life on the line to protect us that we will take care of them. That being said, there isn't a bureaucracy in DC that doesn't have a bloated budget right now. And you have to have administrators in place that know how to find that, and the people that are over those administrators have to hold them accountable. There needs to be some accountability in Washington
You
for
think there's-
each and every bureaucracy.
Do you think there's never been any accountability when we've had Republican presidents or had Republicans in control of Congress? I mean, because I'm getting old in the tooth here, and I've been hearing this ever since I was a kid.
We've had an issue with accountability. It's been a bipartisan issue, and I think we all know that.
But no one, I mean, it's a campaign phrase, waste, fraud, and abuse every election, and people are going to go and clean it up, get rid of it, but they never do. So what would you do differently?
That's where I think there's a systemic issue. And I need to take, the one thing I've learned over the years is I may not have all the answers, but I know how to ask the questions. And it seems to me that there's a systemic issue and we aren't asking the right questions. I need to take a hard look at it.
Okay, but getting back to, I mentioned Simpson Bowles earlier, where they've taken a hard look and they've asked the questions. What would you do beyond that?
You may have to do some outside analysis. It's quite possible they're just all too close to the problem.
It was an independent commission. So, anyway, I just wanted to ask. Thanks.
And I forget where I left off. I think it was Mr. Vivaldi.
Before we cut national defense, there are other things that we should be looking at. Just recently, with the IRS, a lot of Americans didn't realize that they were getting bonuses, a lot of these employees. And I want to know why. Are we giving out bonuses to folks who should be working? They're civil servants just like the rest of us. So when you start talking about national defense and cutting things, there are other departments that we could be looking at that we should be seeing how we can cut there. And I say that because specifically in District 9, we're talking about simulation. We're talking about Army simulation. I was reaching out to one of the sergeants yesterday, Sergeant Major Garcia, who told me, we're concerned about our jobs and about what's happening. And so simulation, I believe that, Mr. Bonilla said, there's older things that we can get rid of and we can definitely cut. But there are modern technology that we're using here, right here in Central Florida with UCF, out in the Lake Nona area, that I don't see the answer of cutting programs such as these that are really going to advance us in the future. And not that I'm not advocating for war. I'm not saying we're going into a war, but I think we need to be prepared. And the best defense is to be ready and to have these kind of programs in place. But there are other things I believe that we could be looking at overall that we could be cutting versus the national defense to begin with.
I think it's pretty important for each of you to get an opportunity, since you are presenting voters with a choice in this primary, why they should choose you over your two opponents in the primary. Start with you, Mr. Bonilla.
Absolutely. Voters in the 9th District should choose me above my opponents, quite simply because I'm the only candidate that can effectively build bridges to the entirety of the district. I can reach out to our immigrant communities, to the Hispanic community. I can reach out to business people, small business people, to our ranchers and citrus growers, understanding the needs of everybody. And I can deliver that authentic representation of Washington, D.C. I have, as a public servant, I've worked in the 9th Judicial District in a stressful environment as a court interpreter, where we are hyper vigilant over a defendant's Sixth Amendment right to be present at trial. Have had to work in stressful situations with judges, with juries, with prosecutors and attorneys, working as well behind the scenes with staff, with clerks and judicial assistants, ensuring that we deliver that outstanding internal and external customer service, while again ensuring due process of law. It is this vigilance to duty, combined with the fact that I am the only veteran in the field, that I will bring to Washington, D.C. and deliver representation that we can all be proud of.
Mr. Vivaldi.
Sure. Living here for 3 decades, I was a youth pastor for a very long time, work in corporate America now, work with a lot of healthcare industry right now, and working with the Medicare Advantage program. I see a lot of need in this community. And for me, I'm not just walking into this community. I'm a part of this community. And there's a difference as to what have you done for me lately. I don't believe you could just walk into this district, especially when it comes to a general election, and start looking at folks and saying, I'm here in your neighborhood, vote for me. You've had to have been engaged in this community, especially in the Hispanic community. When we talk about immigration and we asked about citizenship, I'm the only one on this board that for the last 2 years has been advocating for immigration reform, going to Senator Rubio's office and others. I've been criticized because of that. I can handle that. I can handle the fact that there are so many needs in this community, and there's so many to even start enumerating, that we just cannot walk in and say, hey, Peter Vivaldi is here, and all of a sudden everybody knows who you are. As a youth pastor and working in this community so long, I thought I knew a lot of people. Surprise, I don't. And I've had to work hard. I think the hardest working person at this panel has been me, because I'm the one who has the least money. I'm the one who's had to really go out there and seek and talk to folks, and been supported by over 120 churches that have said, this is the guy that we need out there because he understands our needs. He understands our community. And so for me to walk into any restaurant, to walk into any, that's what the community wants. If they want a politician, that's not me. I'm the person that's going to go up, roll my sleeves, and if in 2 years, after I'm voted into office, they don't like what I've done, then they could vote me out. But it's very, very important for them to understand that they're going to have an advocate in DC that's going to represent them and represent them well.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Platt.
I feel that I'm uniquely positioned to represent this district. I've been involved in all 3 counties. My background is in entrepreneurial business, retail, and real estate. And in agriculture. Our family's been in agriculture for over 135 years in the district. In 2013, we won the Environmental Stewardship Award from the National Cattlemen's Beef Association for Region 2, and the Environmental Leadership Award from the Florida Department of Agriculture, Adam Putnam's office, and we were also named the Landowners of the Year by Florida Land Stewardship Partners. Now that's reaching across a broad spectrum of natural resources. I have also been involved in K through 20 education, served for 8 years at Polk State, and I chaired the Florida Association of Community Colleges, working directly with Sandy Shooter at Valencia. That's 2 of the highest education, largest higher education institutions in the district. When we're talking about workforce development and we're talking about opportunity education and entrepreneurship, I've been at the forefront of that within the district and within the state and nationally. I served on the ACT board in public policy at one point, representing the college system. So I'm very closely connected to food, shelter, and educational opportunity. And if that doesn't take you back to the people, I don't know what does. And with that, I have a track record of conservatism that has breadth and it has depth. I've been fortunate to have been endorsed by a number of conservative leaders, including former Governor Jeb Bush, former Congressman Dave Weldon, and former Ag Commissioner and Senator Charlie Bronson, and current Representative Mike LaRosa, all elected in historic races in the district. Now, I intend to go out and make a little more history, and I intend to represent the people in this district, each and every one of them. And I have a number of supporters, from Daisy Lopez Sid to Olga Castano to Danny Villazon, to Hemendra Thakar, and a variety of people. The association that I work at has people that were born in 61 different countries, and we speak 53 different languages. It is a wonderfully diverse district. I've been involved in diversity issues my entire life. And I know that I can bring this community together. And not only that, I know I have to. We can't let this opportunity pass.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us today. Good luck in your campaigns.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.